Read an interesting article from Forbes today about AI in the recruiting process. And right now, 91% of employers are using AI to streamline the recruiting and hiring process. This is everything from screening resumes, to scheduling interviews, to crafting job offers. Which leads to the question, so humans are basically useless now, right? We can just fire all the HR reps. We don't need them anymore. We're just gonna use AI to do everything from now on. Well, what's interesting is that 55% of companies that laid off staff now regret that decision. So where do we lie here? Should we be implementing AI? Should we not be implementing AI? There's some really important lessons here, because what AI actually does is it is a force multiplier. If you have flaws, if you have mistakes, if you have problems within your business processes, it is going to highlight them. If you're crushing it in certain areas, AI is a force multiplier, can help you scale that out. And this is, I think, a really important thing. I mean, just in the hiring process, by the way, I recorded a video about what McDonald's is doing. I'll post a link to it here. You know, AI is becoming very ubiquitous in the hiring process. And McDonald's used AI to screen 64 million job applicants. And as I kind of dove into that, again, I'll share the link to that video here. It's not just McDonald's, it's Chipotle, it's Wendy's, it's all the companies are using AI to screen job applicants. In that video, I kind of walk through what that means, what the implications are, how you can kind of get through that. Regardless, companies are using AI, but if we got 55% saying we kind of regret laying off staff now because we have these gaps, that's a problem. That's a problem. So why is that happening? Right? You know, it's because typically that the processes are vague, they're unclear, and then AI compounds that damage. If it's disciplined, if it's fair, if your processes are well structured, if you are able to measure inputs and outputs, AI can really crush it there for you. So we need to be thinking about that, guys, when we're building our businesses, when we're implementing AI. I think we can all agree that AI is important, that we should be implementing it, but doing it the wrong way, it can explode your business, and it can explode in the wrong way. It can explode your job role within an organization too. You know, for example, if you're going to be implementing some sort of bot, it needs to have clear instructions. It needs precise SOPs. It needs great training. It needs clear prompts. You need to have good FAQs. You need to have a specific desired goal and metric for that bot. You need to have measurable KPIs, okay? You need to be able to have a feedback loop system where you can continue to iterate. And again, I just don't think most organizations have this fleshed out. And don't get me wrong, I think it's good to move fast, break things, and then fix it. But listen, if you're able to kind of implement these systems on the front end, implement these procedures on the front end, you can save yourself a lot of pain. You know what I'm saying? By the way, if you've had personal experience with this, I'd love to hear it. Put it in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. Like this, guys, this channel is all about organizing men together so that we can crush it with AI, so we can remain relevant, respected, financially free. Because things are changing very rapidly, and we got to stick together. We got to find ways to really leverage these tools for good, right? Our families are relying on us, guys. Because I think one of the problems that people have run into, companies have run into, is that they're leveraging speed as their primary metric. And speed is important, but it's not the only metric that we need to be measuring when we're implementing AI into our hiring or into our sales systems, into any of our systems, right? You know, let's look at hiring specifically. You know, we need to be mindful of specific inputs and outputs. How many resumes lead to interviews? How many interviews lead to follow-ups? How many follow-ups lead to hiring? How many hires actually end up being a good fit for the organization? How many are there after 90 days? Like, I think, and again, if you're not clear on these metrics, if you don't have a clear way of measuring them on the front end, AI is not going to actually help. It's going to exacerbate problems. You know, I work in the sales and marketing side, and when I think about this, I think about, you know, how many prospects become leads, how many leads become sales qualified leads, marketing qualified leads, how many become opportunities to go into our sales and deal pipelines. How many of those are converting? How many of those deals, how many emails are converting to meetings? How many meetings are actually occurring, right? What is the result of the meetings? And then, you know, if we're not, because the problem, guys, is if we're not clear on these numbers, AI isn't going to actually solve our problem. It's going to exacerbate our problem. You can't just say, oh, I'll just throw in an AI bot and call it a day. Because then you're going to end up spending thousands of dollars on tokens. You're going to be spending lots of money, and you have no actual way of figuring out where the gaps are, where the leaks are in your systems, right? So how do we actually ensure that we're ready for AI implementation, right? And this is kind of I think the core here that I want to talk about here briefly. It's something I'm thinking about a lot on a professional level, and I think that this Forbes article really highlights it. How are we sure that we're ready for AI implementation? Well, we need to have clear definitions of roles, right? 55% of these employers are using AI to speed up their job descriptions, but if you're just recycling a list of buzzwords, you're not actually going to attract the proper candidate. And it's the same thing with sales and marketing, guys. If you're just throwing into ChatGPT, copying, pasting what ChatGPT gives you, it's just going to give you a bunch of buzzwords, and it's very robotic. You need to be specifically clear within your organization of what you're looking for. Okay. Think about targeting, targeted sourcing. Just throwing something up on Indeed and calling it a day is not good enough. You can do that, and it's going to fill up your job funnel. And that's never been easier. The problem, guys, though, it's all noise. It's all bullcrap. It's all fake. I record an entire video on this, which is shocking. There's 7 million job listings, but they're all fake. Because what's happening is employers, just like you, and HR reps, just like you, are using AI to post up jobs very, very quickly, very, very rapidly. And then what's happening? You're getting a bunch of AI applicants. I mean, you check out that story. It's crazy what's happening between what the employers are doing and what the job hunters are doing. Everyone's using AI, so it's a bunch of AI bots talking to each other. We need to use the AI, but we also need to refine the reach. We need to put up friction points to slow down access, right? You can't just fill out an application and immediately get into a meeting. You got to trim down that access. There need to be benchmarks there. There need to be friction points in your job hiring funnel, right? In the sales world, you could say that, okay, we're moving you from a prospect to a lead to a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead. Same thing here. We need to add friction points to kind of gauge who is most hungry. In the employment world too, I mean, and it depends on the job role that you're running for. Typically when I'm hiring for more project based. I can say, hey, send me a sample of your previous work. Boom, that looks good. Here's the project. Good, let's get it done. Video editing, bot building, web design, that type of stuff, right? But depending on the role you're hiring for, you definitely want to have consistent evaluation methods. What are your skill assessments? Are you offering a Wonderlic? Do you have structured interviews? Try to stay consistent across the board, because it's much easier to measure your inputs and your outputs. This is one of the things I've learned in the marketing world. There's a balance between specificity and customization and having measurable effects. And I'll give you an example of this. And you probably experienced this as well. If you look at, for example, the properties in your CRM or the tags in your CRM, the segmentation in your CRM, there's probably hundreds, dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of different ways that you're segmenting your customers, prospects, etc. And then the problem is, if you're too specific, it ends up being impossible to actually generate any sort of conclusions on the back end. If you were to take those and say, okay, let's kind of lump them into more broad, if we're able to lump them in more broadly, you're actually able to start to see some trends. I'll give you an example. In the marketing world, we use a concept called UTM tracking. And what that allows us to do is see where traffic is coming from, how it's moving through the customer journey and through our funnels, okay? There's different things that we track there. We track the source, we track the medium, we track the individual content, we track all these different things. And what we do is we start broad. So for one example could be Google Ads, and then which piece of content the Google ad converted, which ad was it, because we're running multiple ads at the same time, right? And there's different pieces of content, different assets within each ad. So again, you can start broad and get granular. The point I'm trying to make here is that when you're trying to segment out and I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, guys, it's kind of where I'm thinking, but as you're trying to segment out, you know, try to be structured, be consistent, creating a new, like the more meetings you have, the more schedules you have, the more types of interactions that you have within your pipelines and your funnels, whether that's hiring new people or finding new customers, the more there is, the harder it is to track. So you need to be able to track inputs and outputs. And once we have clarity on that, that's when we can implement the AI bots, the AI chat bots, the AI schedulers, right? You can't just throw that in and then hope it works. We need to have a little bit more structure. We need to be able to measure the inputs and the outputs to see that it works. Because, and just to kind of tie a bow on this, the key to implementing AI effectively is to magnify systems that work, because what it will also do is it will expose what doesn't work. And I think that's what we see by these 55% of organizations that say, I think we laid people off too fast. We used a bunch of AI and it didn't work. And frankly, I think that's what a lot of the mean and angry comments that we get below, is like, AI doesn't work, it's all outsourced, it doesn't. Well, guys, I think that's because you're within an organization that isn't properly measuring. You're showing up to work, but there's no way of measuring your inputs and outputs. You're kind of doing all these obscure, maybe unclear tasks and roles, and if you can't measure the output, you can't possibly hope to implement AI in an effective way. It just won't work. The last thing I'll point out here on the AI is you can't just set it and forget it. You have to have feedback systems. You have to have feedback loops. You have to be able to go in and keep iterating on the bots. If you see that, oops, we implemented an AI scheduler and that reduced our amount of qualified leads or qualified candidates, okay, well, let's try to tweak it and let's figure out where it went wrong. Again, if you don't have a system for measuring inputs and outputs, you won't be able to see that. So this is really, really important. Listen, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for subscribing. There's so much news happening all the time, and I'm just trying to bring you what I'm thinking about. And if you like today's video, I think you're really gonna like yesterday's video where we talk about how ChatGPT is changing the way that we generate leads in this world, how we're generating new clients and customers. I'll tell you exactly how you can leverage ChatGPT to drive traffic to your website, because this is what's happening, guys. People are going to ChatGPT, they're asking very specific questions, and ChatGPT is recommending solutions. It's got shopping built in, it's recommending websites and companies, and if your company's not being recommended, you're missing out on perhaps one of the biggest opportunities since Google SEO. Check out the video. I'll see you there. In the meantime, go make it great. All right, boys. See ya. Peace.